Welcome to the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable, where authors from all walks of life come together to discuss the trials, tribulations, and triumphs of publishing their books. I'm Alice Stockton Rossini. Join us here every Saturday night at 8 o'clock, or listen to our podcast anytime on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, and PodServe, just to name a few. The Author Roundtable is sponsored by ReaderHouse Online Bookstore, where independent new authors come first. Kit Spayd has spent much of her life caring for others, and then she wrote a book entitled A Selfless Life. But it's not what you think. Take it away, Kit.
Well, for a while, I was a stay-at-home mom. And then my husband got sick, so then I became a caregiver. And then I opened a bakery, actually with my mom. And a month after I opened, she passed away.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah.
Is your husband okay?
Yes, he has primary progressive multiple sclerosis, and it literally, Alice, it just hit like all of a sudden he couldn't see out of his one eye, and it was really weird because he was a volunteer firefighter, and I thought, you know what, maybe you got something in it. Let's call the doctor. And I didn't know anything about it. This was 10 years ago. I didn't really hear about that. He had some pretty intense drug therapy that he had to do. Every 3 months, he was in the hospital with another MS flare up. He has over 30 lesions on his brain and his spinal cord. And then now it seems to kind of have leveled off, knock on wood. So I also have a special needs daughter, so I took care of her. That's why I was a stay-at-home mom for so long.
Wow.
Yeah, and then when my mom passed away, I had to take care of my dad. So it was kind of like, all right, I guess that's my goal in life. And it's funny because everybody thinks that the name of the book is about being a caregiver and about my life story, and it's absolutely not.
I saw that when I read the blurb. I went, because when I called you the first time and you said, I'm with my dad, I thought, oh, that must be what her book's about. It must have something to do with this.
Right? Everybody thinks that, and it's not even close.
Well, what inspired a book called A Selfless Life, if not A Selfless Life?
It's funny because when you read it,
Mm-hmm.
You'll see. But it is all about living a selfless life. And all of the characters in the book have something selfless, that they have to accomplish, or, it's part of their career, it's part of their jobs. So I know within the fire service, from experience, from being in it pretty much my entire life and generations in my family, that was one motto they had. And my husband became a volunteer a few years after we got married. We got married pretty young. So he became a volunteer. And then I decided to be a part of it with him because, I wanted to do that with him.
So what did you do?
I was actually the president of the fire company.
That's a tough job.
It was not the greatest. Unfortunately, there was a lot of proving that I had to do to the individuals around me because I was a female in a man's, atmosphere, basically. But it ended up being pretty great with learning from them and them learning from me and building such a thriving fire company, literally right across the street from my house. And a lot of my own experiences, I kind of put a little bit on paper and changed some of it around, to make it a fun story for people.
Did you ever write before?
I always have. I've always written. This was my first published book. I actually have done ghostwriting for quite a few years now, because it was something easy that I could do at home while I was taking care of everybody. So when I finally decided that I took a little job across the street from my house. It was a beer distributor. And the gentleman was looking for somebody just to kind of run the office during the day. So as I was sitting there, I just came up with this idea. I was like, you know what? I'm going to write a novella, nothing crazy. And I was like, I want it to be kind of like a love story. So first it ended up first it ended up being like a different kind of love story.
Like what kind of love story?
Like the sexy novels.
What's wrong with a sexy novel? I love a sexy
Nothing.
novel.
Nothing. Absolutely nothing. But having two girls, I knew, especially my oldest. I just told her that originally that's what the book was. And she was like, "Mama, I am so glad that you did not write that. I would be mortified." So that's originally what it was. And I mean, start to finish, that is originally what I wrote. And it was graphic and not what you would expect from after reading what is now to what I originally wrote. I mean, the main character is Belle, and she is mid-age, late 30s, early 40s. She has two kids. She loses her husband tragically, and she is just trying to figure out life. She's just trying to raise her kids. She works for the township that they live in. She does all human resource stuff. And her mom, she is originally from around the same area. At least that's what Belle has always been under the impression of. And her mom had moved out of the area when she was about 19. And she didn't live there very long. Her dad, which would be Belle's grandfather, he was a miner. So, the book is based in Pittsburgh, like right outside of Pittsburgh. So back then it was, a lot of mining, and most people that were working there came there for, to get a job as a miner. So there's a lot of backstory with her mom. There's a lot of things that Belle doesn't know. There's a lot of secrets that she doesn't know. Is there a lot of intertwined stories that Belle doesn't even realize? And when it comes to light later in the book, she is flabbergasted, I guess you could say, about these things that she never knew about her mother, and she didn't know about this town that she lives in for the last 6 years. And so there's a lot of things that that reveal themselves to her. So that's why I actually have three more to this story. I have three more books.
Oh, it's a trilogy.
Yeah, to answer questions from the first one, and then answer questions from the second one, and then finally everything is done. Because there's a lot of unanswered questions within A Selfless Life. And, some things do come to light, and you do get resolution on some things, but there are things where people were like, what is happening? And I had the intention all along to write multiple books for it. So it makes me happy that people are like, I need more. I need to know, like, what happens to this person? What happens to that person? She has a love interest. His name is Corey. He is probably the main male character of the book.
Okay.
And his father and her mother have a very long history together, which she had no idea because she didn't know her mother lived there long enough for her to really have a history with anyone.
Okay.
So when she finds this out, first she's hurt that her mom never told her. And second, now she's like, well, what else haven't you told me? What other secrets are there? And Corey is kind of the same with his father and and his mother, where he's like, what do I not know? What other secrets is this town hiding from us? And it's a specific age group that is a part of kind of all of the secrets. So it's kind of like the parents of the younger characters in the book. They would have been early 20 somethings and late teens in the 60s and 70s.
Okay.
So, and the book is based in the 2010s.
But they're all living selfless lives.
The majority of them, yes. Corey is a captain with the fire department. He does a lot of training with the kids and stuff. Belle's husband, who passed, he was a paramedic. Pretty much every character is a part of either the firehouse, the police department, or the hospital.
Okay. Do you get to go out and talk about your book?
So I have a few book signings set up. One is at my community center because I figured I wanted to start at home. And then the other one is at one of the local Barnes and Nobles, which I'm really excited for.
It sounds like people have read your book because you said they're looking forward to the
Yes.
next one.
Yes, I have sold 200 copies so far. I'm so happy with that. I mean, obviously, what writer would not want to be a bestseller right away? But that comes with time, right?
Yeah.
It comes with time and a little bit more maturity when it comes to how you write and the length of your novels and stuff like that. So, it's a work in progress, and it's something that I'm learning. And I know that because I manifest so many good things in my life, I know I'll get to that point.
You sound like you know a lot about writing. I mean, you were a ghostwriter. How did that happen?
That actually happened by accident. My mom was a typesetter. She used to have her own business. It was called Graham Graphics. She would set up books for people, for printing and stuff like that. And it was really hard, in the early 2000s to, kind of really find anything to do without a degree. So I helped my mom a lot with her business. And then I happened to talk to a couple of the clients that she had. And, they had asked for a few things that I had written before. And it was just a bunch of different, short stories, poems, and whatnot. And there were two gentlemen and they were partners and they wrote periodicals.
Technical writing.
Yes. And, they would just give me a topic and, I would have to do my research on it and do the legwork, write everything up and give it to them. And if it was sufficient for them, they would print it in their periodical. And if it wasn't, they would send it back.
So you've been writing since grade school then?
Yep.
And then finally you decided to pull the trigger.
Well, when my mom passed, I just was like, because I was never going to get A Selfless Life published originally because it was a smut novel. I really wrote it just for me.
Did you enjoy writing it?
I did.
Was that kind of an escape for you?
Very much so. It took me 17 years to do this book. I stopped writing because, my kids kind of took over. They started getting older and life took over. So I just put the book, honestly, in my bottom drawer of my dresser and I never went back to it. And then when my mom passed, I got a journal and I started writing to her. Since she had passed, I figured that was still my way of connecting with her.
Yeah.
And I got a grief counselor, especially with all of the things that have happened in my life. I didn't want to get into a bad place in my head. So I decided to get a grief counselor. She was the best decision I could have made. When we were talking before our last session, she had said, what are your hobbies? What do you like to do? And I told her I started writing a book. And she was like, okay. So I told her about the book. And, losing my mom, it was very impactful on my life. My mom was my best friend. She was 71. She had a massive heart attack in my living room. It was very traumatic, but it brought positive things from it. And this book is one of them, because I truly believe had she not passed, I would have never picked that book up again. I would have never rewrote it to what it is today because life was too busy. It taught me to calm down and slow down. So I finished it within 3 months. I rewrote the entire story in 3 months.
That's amazing. I talk to people all the time, and first of all, it's hard to get off the mark and get the book done. And a lot of times it takes a life event to kind of push you over the edge and say, I'm going to do this now. But then it's like you've already set up book signings. People have such a difficult time with that. Can you give them any advice?
Well, I've always been the type of person that if you say no, it's okay. I'm just going to go to the next door. And if they tell me no, eventually one of those doors is going to tell me yes. And I truly believe that. I don't really give up too often. So when I first started my research on what would be the best options for me for book signings, the community center for my town was not even that wasn't even an issue. That was, just contacting them and telling them about the book. And they actually ordered the book and put it in the library, which was very exciting. But so for the Barnes and Nobles, because my book is print on demand, it's very difficult to get a lot of attention from booksellers like Barnes and Noble, any of your local bookshops, because they don't want to print on demand. They want these big publishers that, they can call them and say, I want 6 of these books here. And I don't think it makes it doesn't make it any less of an importance on who it is that your publisher is. It's more of what the store is particularly looking for. So when I emailed, I cold called everybody because I felt that was the only way that I was going to get it done. I don't have a marketing team. I am my marketing team. So, you have to be your own team. You have to be your own advocate to contact these places. And if they say no, okay, thank you for your time. And like I said, you move on to the next one. Now, I've had quite a few say yes. There are stipulations. They order the books, and whatever they don't sell, they send back, which kind of stinks because I would really like them to keep them in their store. But that's not how they work if you are a print on demand author. So I read a lot on how to send a query letter to these bookstores. I think that was one of the most crucial parts, was because it wasn't just, hi, I wrote a book. I would like to come in and sell my book. Could you guys do a book signing for me? No. It was, I introduced myself. I told them that, I was a new author and I'm a local author. So a lot of your local bookstores like the fact when you're local and you tell them, I am a local newly published author. I told them a little bit about the book. I put a blurb in there, put a little blurb about myself, and I told them what my expectations were. I didn't beat around the bush. Similar to how you would write a query letter to a literary agent is very similar to what I did to the bookstores, and had some interest from a few of the bookstores and a few of the Barnes and Nobles that are local to me. I live about 20 minutes from Philly, so there are numerous bookstores in Philly that were like, yeah, we can do that.
Really?
Yeah.
Which
was great.
Yeah.
But you have to be your biggest advocate. You have to be your number one fan. You have to do all of the legwork. Unless you have money, which I know from personal experience, you do not have the money right away to have this fantastic marketing team. You don't have people backing you right away and saying, hey, I'm going to give you all this money so you can go do this. Nope. You have to do it all on your own.
Yeah. And I always tell people, they'll say, well, somebody reached out to me. I swear there are people out there just looking for those new authors so they can go, yep, hey, we'll handle this, we'll handle that. And they're not going to do anything.
They're not.
And I feel bad for people who write books that can't get behind them. It's like, well, I don't have a great personality. I really don't like talking in front of people. And it's like, well, I have to say, there are some people who are great with social media. But like you said, where there's a will, there's a way. And when somebody says no, that's got to be your inspiration. No.
Absolutely. That needs to give you that drive. You need to be like, okay, fine. They said no. Thank you for your time. Moving on. Let's move to the next one. Because eventually, when you start getting a yes, then it's like, oh, this is awesome. And then you get another yes. And then you get another yes. But then you might get another no. And it's like, okay, that's okay.
Right.
That's okay.
Right.
And you just have to be okay with being turned down. And that's a huge fear I know from other writers. I'm on so many different writers groups and stuff, especially on social media. And I read a lot of them. And I sold 200 books in 1 month.
Wow.
And, I have other writer friends who's had a published book for over a year, and they haven't even sold 200 books in over a year. And they're like, Kit, what are you doing?
Right.
And I'm like, I am putting myself out there. I'm not afraid to put myself out there. I'm terrified to talk in public. Absolutely terrified to the point where I want to get sick. But I know I have to do that. Like, I have to put myself in that uncomfortable situation because I'm the only one that can. I can't have anybody speak on my behalf because
Right.
people don't want to hear that. They want to hear you. They want to hear what you have to say.
Right.
So yeah, it's a lot more work than I thought it was going to be.
I know. And people say, I thought they were going to promote me more. And, I don't have time to go to New York, or I don't have to. And I always say to people, you don't have to. Start where you are. But nobody is going to promote your book better than you are. It's your baby.
Absolutely.
It's your baby. You have a lot of positive energy, but you know what? You've been to hell and back a couple of times in your life.
Too.
You were homeless
too. Yeah.
Yeah. That kind of gives you a different perspective on life, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Keep moving, baby.
Yes, that's it.
Keep moving
that's all
forward.
You can do.
Kit, what a pleasure. I'll talk to you when you finish that next book.
That sounds like a plan to me.
All right, Kit, you take care.
Thanks, Alice. You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks to baby boomers, retirement communities are booming, and Dr. Judith C. Kayloe is taking notes. You can read her observations in her book entitled Race to the Finish Line, Social Dynamics in Retirement Communities. Give us a little bit about your background.
I was a clinical psychologist, and I had a private practice. At first, I started in an agency helping underprivileged people, and I worked with severely disturbed population. But then when I opened my private practice, I was able to serve an underserved area of Ohio, and it was very satisfying. The practice grew and grew until there were 18 people there, and it's still there, and probably with more people.
So what made you turn your attention to our aging population in retirement communities?
When I was ready to retire, I look up social aspects of anything I get involved in, or more interested in that than financial things. And I noted how many books were written about financial aspects of retirement and very little about social dynamics. So I think, without even consciously thinking about it, but that's my point of view in life, as I retired myself, I noticed all of these peculiarities and characteristics in different communities. Like in Tennessee, I had a summer home in Tennessee for many years, which was absolutely lovely. The people were so altruistic and very warm and inviting Southerners. And then in Florida, but I noticed some of the characteristics in the community, which was supposed to be a retirement haven, were so similar no matter what the demographics were. So I was sort of intrigued by that. And there seemed to be a person in each community that was designated a mayor. We never called them that, but they acted like the mayor, glad-handing everybody and sort of feeling they were in charge of things. And other people who excelled at athletics seemed to have their role in the community. And if somebody dropped out, moved, somebody just seeped right into their role. So it was like studying a community with group dynamics.
Well, aren't those group dynamics the same ones that you find in a church, in any kind of group? There's somebody who kind of assumes the leadership role, whether they're designated a leader or not. And there's different groups within the larger group.
Yes, I think it's very applicable to any community, even perhaps an apartment building in New York. But I think it's more intense here because it may be one of the last communities one lives in, and the proximity of the people to one another is very close. In fact, we used to make jokes if people were snowbirds, they called them in Florida, that it was time for us to leave and go to our summer homes. We were getting on each other's back. When I started to think about it, retirement is pretty new, in my opinion. And although our fathers and our grandfathers sat on porches on rockers, this generation is very obsessed with exercise, activity, and independence. And most of the people in the communities I lived in were rather successful. So I was really surprised at the competition at this point in our life and the aggressiveness against one another. It was almost like being back in the second grade, if not in high school. Attendance at any HOA meeting may be called a situation. People who are used to being in charge of corporations or law practices or physicians sitting and arguing with each other, it's like a bunch of chiefs with no Indians.
And everybody's right.
Everybody's angry and totally hostile, as if their entire reputation and their careers hinged on what the results were. And they seem to be a lot of control freaks, I guess.
What are some of the more useful things in your book? You say that, you offer observations and insights that may be identifying. What do you mean by that?
Well, I know that we're all obsessed with a lot of things at this end of the age spectrum, and one of them is dieting and health.
That's why pickleball is off the charts. Most of the people playing pickleball are over 60, and it's very competitive.
A lot of them wind up in the hospital. It's an orthopedic's delight, because some of them are not realistic about their limitations. For others, it's excellent. And there seem to be, of course, different groups of retirement. The oldest retired, the middle group, and the newest retired are quite young these days and in very good shape. So it's wonderful that they practice all these sports. But I think part of my point was that we should be winding down a little bit, but we seem to be winding up in an effort perhaps to deny our demise. I'm not sure. The other tips that I have in the book to get off a morbid subject is exit letters. I thought that was a rather good idea, that having a large party for all one's friends when you're still here above ground might be fun, and also writing exit letters to all those dear people who mean so much to you and letting them know how much they meant. It's also a good way, I guess, of taking stock of who your friends are and what your needs are and your pleasures, I guess. And I think we can't take our things with us or how neat our houses are or aren't, but our friends and loves seem to be what sustain us the most in the most current research. A friend of mine's mother is 105, and she's in a facility that has a bridge game every single day, and she plays well. So that, I think, is very personal, because I myself, I'm very social. I wouldn't mind at all being in a facility like that. I think of it as a hotel where your meals and your housekeeping needs are taken care of. It kind of sounds ideal to me.
You said that the book defines our generation's approach to aging. When you say our generation, what generation are you talking about? People in their 60s, 70s?
Right, up to 90s. And I think it's the World War II, children were babies, and then baby boomers, and then the new generation coming in, which are at odds at some point. And there's a lot of ageism, I believe, that's very subtle that goes on, where the younger, newly retired watch the older retired with some disdain, because they think more and more exercise will ward off any disability or incompetency. I think there's a huge pull in our culture of independence versus communal living. So we see it played out in a lot of the activities. But that's the other thing that's kind of interesting here. In many retirement communities, there are parties for every occasion, dances. It is and could be a paradise, except everybody has some disillusionment about what it turns out to be for them, and they start being very critical of their environment. So I used to joke and call this community Camelot or Complain a Lot.
So it's one or the other. I think that's just people, though, don't you think? There are people who are never going to be happy. It doesn't matter.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, hard to please people, and they miss New York bagels or deli. And When you moved here, you can't expect that.
Yeah. Yeah. So what's your situation? Are you in a retirement community?
I do live in a lovely gated retirement community, and most of these were started around golf courses with country clubs, but they seem to be less with the golf courses because of the expense and time involved in golf, and more with clubhouses that have all kinds of activity and people, as I said, in very close proximity.
Do you enjoy living there?
Oh, I love it. Even though I look at it with a critical eye and sort of irony. I'm having the time of my life. I never knew retirement could be so much fun.
Well, not everybody can afford to live in places like that, right?
Right, but we can all afford the beautiful programs on TV, movies, streaming, writing. Doesn't cost any money. So getting involved in activities wherever you live. I remember moving one summer to North Carolina and joining a senior center there. Within 20 minutes, I had friends,
Right.
an art class, a yoga class. I was thrilled.
So are they letting you do a book signing at your facility?
Yes, I had one scheduled. We'll see if it comes across, because there was a complete overthrow of all the administration here. This community, houses were finished right when COVID started, so it created some peculiarly aggressive and disappointing dynamics. The people really were isolated for 2 years and didn't have a chance to bond as much, and were very scared and angry. Also, the political climate, I think, that we've had the last few years encourages defending oneself in bizarre kind of ad hominem ways where people attack one another.
Yeah, I think we're all seeing that. Our ability to accept that it's okay to have a different opinion.
Yeah.
It's okay. It's not my job to convince you that I'm right and you're wrong. It's not your job to convince me. I will hear you out, but I find people don't even want to hear each other out anymore. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. You're wrong. You're wrong. There's nothing right about the right. There's nothing right about the left. It's all wrong. And so I would think that if you're in a situation, a communal situation, that could get pretty touchy.
Yes, there are enemy camps, so to speak, which has been seen throughout history. But at this sophisticated level, it's sort of shocking that people can't tolerate different opinions and that the stakes are so high.
Well, I think your book would be really interesting reading for a lot of people. And you're in Florida. There's a lot of communities.
Yes, certainly. I'm very mobile and active for my age, which I guess is the mantra of this generation.
How old? Do you mind me asking how old you are?
Yes, I'm proud of it. 82. I think people think I'm much younger. So younger people approach me, and then when they realize my age, they say they wish I would have been their grandma.
Aww.
And I think they mean it well, but it feels like a little bit of a slap in the face.
Well, you're a very kind and engaging person, and I think you've written a very interesting book, and I wish you the best of luck.
Thank you so much.
You got it, Judy. You have a great day.
You too. Thanks so much.
Kathleen Butcher just moved to a new home in the Ozarks with 2 little girls, 14 months apart, and the oldest one is just under a year. And somehow she found time to write. Hey, look at me. When do you write?
I do it as inspiration hits. If I think about something, I'll write it down in my phone and might come back to it later, but that's kind of how I operate.
Well, I mean, how long have you been operating like this?
Since my daughter was a newborn, basically.
Is she your inspiration?
Yes. My book was based on a song that I wrote for her. She was on, I like to say, she was on nap strike. She wouldn't take a nap. So I created this song for her in hopes that she would go to sleep. And so I just wrote it down, and then I ended up sending it off to publishing after a couple of days just to see if it would make progress, and turns out it did.
How old was she when she went on nap strike?
About 5 months old.
Oh, you poor thing. What, you want to sing the song for me?
It goes. I'll send you a part of it. The part of it I'll give you is her nickname is Turkey because she was born right around Thanksgiving. So it goes, "Hey, look at me! Hey, look at me! I'm the turkey on the farm. The turkey from the flock. The turkey from the flock. Gobble gobble gobble. I'm the turkey from the flock."
Did it get her to sleep?
Unfortunately, no. She got a little bit wired up because of the rhythm to it.
Oh, because it sounds like a pretty up song. I was wondering, like, did you sing it slow? And
No, I started out slow as I was like creating it, and then it just kind of got a beat from there. But she was like, "I'm still not taking a nap."
oh, man. So this song became a book.
Yes. The book is about farm animals and the sounds that they make. So it's cows, they moo, sheep, they baa. Each animal is associated with like a cow's from a herd, and they go moo, moo, moo. And it says, "Hey, look at me." And there's going to be a picture of an animal. And then the next scene is like zoomed up on that animal. The first animal is a rooster. And they go, "Hey, look at me. Hey, look at me. I'm the rooster from the farm, rooster from the farm. Cock-a-doodle-doo, I'm the rooster from the farm." And then the next one goes, "Hey, look at me. Hey, look at me." And it's the next picture is a herd of cows. And there's one in the very back that's kind of peeking out. And on the next scene is the cow zoomed up. "Hey, look at me. Hey, look at me. I'm the cow from the herd. The cow from the herd. Moo, moo, moo. I'm the cow from the herd."
That's so cute. Do your little girls love this book?
Yes. I showed my daughter the book, and whenever she sees it around, she'll go pick it up and want me to read it to her.
Is this the only book you're going to write, or are you thinking maybe?
I have a second one in editing right now called "You're Going to Be a Big Sister Soon," and it's about my daughter becoming a big sister to her little sister. You know, she comes home and it's just her and mommy and daddy, and then all the things that we would do with it when it was just hers, like go to the road trips, go to the zoo, things like that. And then as it goes on, the baby comes home and goes, "How am I supposed to feel about, this little baby coming in, and do my mom and dad still love me the way that they love this new baby?" And at the end, she's like, "Oh, I can accept you."
Does she have a difficult time?
At the beginning, I don't think she quite understood what was going on, but then she realized a little bit that, oh, I'm not getting all the individual attention that I was getting before. So like I would be holding my newborn, and then she would be trying to crawl into my arms going, "Okay, hold me too." So it took a little bit of adapting, but now my littlest one has been around for 7 months. She's like, "Oh, okay, I got this." It's more of just like how I interpret how she felt about bringing in a new family member.
Yeah. So are you kind of documenting your kids' childhood through writing children's books?
Sort of. As inspiration for me strikes at the really most random times. And so the book that I'm publishing right now, "You're Going to Be a Big Sister Soon," one was in the living room screaming for what reason, I'm not sure. And then the other one had just gone down to bed, and she woke up, and so she started yelling. And at the same time they were both yelling, I'm sitting on my bed, and it hit. I'm like, oh, this is what it's like. This must have been what it was like when your sister came home. And within a few minutes, I had the entire story written down.
How about moving? Has that sparked anything?
Not yet, although my father-in-law has given me a little bit of an idea for another book. He has a ranch up here, we moved closer because they have a ranch up here. And he had a cow show up on his property that nobody can figure out. It was a calf, and nobody can figure out where this calf came from, and it just joined his herd. So I'm thinking about maybe doing something with that.
Oh, that's really cute. All right, so now the question is, you're in a new place in the Ozarks. You've got 2 little kids. How do you promote your books?
I'm hoping sooner or later that I'll be able to maybe go to schools or daycares or something and read or do story time at a library or something like that.
Well, it sounds to me that's going to be a natural progression for you, because your little ones are going to start going to preschool, and they're going to start going to the reading time at the library. Do you have any advice for moms that might want to write something down but feel like, gee, I don't have time? Can you write when your child's screaming?
Some people can't. I wouldn't say that's the best time to do it. I just happened to be in another room at the time that started, and both my kids like to trigger each other. So if one starts, the other one will start.
Oh God.
But my advice is that, like, when you have a moment of peace, depending on what your piece is, to write things down. Because me personally, I lose things very fast. I've had whole ideas. I'm like, I got to write this down, and something happened, and I didn't. And now I'm like, man, that was such a great idea. I know it was a great idea, but I didn't write it down, so I don't have it anymore.
Right.
And so my advice is just take the minute or two, write it down. I have running notebook in my phone of just ideas, like rhymes, stories, ideas, and I have like pages and pages of things in my phone that I've just written as I've gone by. And when the kids are not awake or they're napping or something, I'll go back and look at them. Or if I have a free time out to myself,
Yeah.
I'll look at them on my phone. But that's how I manage it, is by keeping it on my phone, because I'll always have my phone on my person, because I don't let my kids have my phone.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's how I manage it.
And you never wrote before this, like when you were a kid, when you were in school?
I wrote a story when I was about 8, and that's what made me want to become an author.
When you were 8?
Yes.
Okay.
So that's when I really like picked up on writing. Was like, I want to do this and write an actual book that's published. And through the years, I've written. I don't do any like journaling or anything like that, but I've just written things on paper as I thought about them through the years. Like when I was a teenager, I just write some random thing down in a notebook every day. One time it was about a deep sea diver that was afraid to dive.
That's a problem.
That is a problem, yeah. And so doing all that has helped, I think, in how I prepare now with writing. Taking the time to write those 1 or 2 sentences down, or go back and look at something. It's even been years down the line that I've looked back at things, like when I was cleaning my room at my parents' house after I was in the military. I came back and I found that story I wrote when I was 8 on notebook paper. I don't know if I still have it, but I was like, I still want to do this.
Oh, how long were you in the military?
I was in almost 7 years.
When did you join?
2012.
Were you just out of school?
No, I had been in the workforce for a little while, but I'd always wanted to join the military. So at 21, that's when I went in.
How was that?
I liked it. I really enjoyed it. I was stationed in Illinois for about 1.5 years, and then I spent the rest of my time stationed in Alaska.
How was that?
Alaska is beautiful. I don't think I'd want to live there again, but the 5 years that I was up there, it was great.
What did you do?
I was a paralegal, so I worked on the military court-martials and claims and legal assistance and things like that.
That must have been really interesting.
Very interesting, for sure. When I got up to Alaska is when I met my husband. We got married about 8 months after we met. And then we waited to have...
You 8 months? Love at first sight, or is it that bad in Alaska?
Well, from what I was told when I got up there, the guys outnumber women about 8-1 in the military.
Oh, my.
I don't know if that's actually true, but that's what I heard.
Okay.
But me and my husband became friends first, and then we started dating, and then, 8 months later, we were married.
And you just knew he was the one.
Yeah.
Aw.
He was the one.
What's your husband do?
Currently, he works as a contractor for the post office.
Great. Well, man, it was really nice talking to you, Kathleen.
It was nice talking to you as well.
You have a great day.
You too.
Eileen Danielson comes from a family of writers, and not to be outdone, she takes us on a sci-fi adventure in her book, Awakening. So I guess writing is in your DNA?
I would say yes. I mean, my grandfather, he used to write poetry. Then I have an uncle who's a published author. And then my sister actually, does a little bit of writing as well.
What's his name?
It's M. Jude Gove.
What's he written? Anything that we would know?
He's written a series called The Rings of the Gods and The Adventures of Helen Wheels.
Did he inspire you?
When it comes to him actually deciding to publish, I think that's really what gave me a little bit of inspiration. Is here he took the time to take something he liked and put it on paper and put it out there for the world to see. And I think that's what helped me decide, I want to be able to I should do that too. I've already got them down. Why not let other people see the worlds I've created in my mind?
When did you start writing?
Actually in high school, because as for projects, that's one thing we all had to do is do some kind of creative writing for school. And I think I've taken some of those ideas, and actually that's what some of my first stories that I've written were from high school. And then I just kind of added on to them.
But this is your first book, right?
This is the first one I'm proud of. I actually had another one published that I wasn't exactly proud of. It had too many mistakes and stuff like that in it. But this is the first one I'm extremely proud of that I love to tell people about. The first one, I went through a publishing company, and it just, it's like I did some research, but it just wasn't what I expected. They told me a lot of things in my in emails, but then when it came down to the contract and reading all the fine print afterwards, that's when I saw the fine print, and it just was not a very good experience. And that's what held me back from wanting to publish again.
Okay.
But I thought, you know what, I'm going to do this again. This is something that I enjoy. And after talking with some of my friends, I decided, you know what, I'm going to look into publishing companies. And I found one that so far I've loved. They've made every bit of the experience very easy for me.
That's always nice to hear. What inspired this book?
One of the things I am a Trekkie.
Okay.
I have been for a long time, but I watched an episode of Star Trek, and I don't want to tell too much about the episode because that'll give a little bit of the book away. But I remember watching this episode, and it was they were under attack in a unique way, and I thought, you know what, that would make it actually a good story if it happened a little differently. And so that episode of Star Trek really is what inspired this my story, Awakening.
Who are your main characters?
A physicist named Derek.
Okay. And
he meets up with the leader of a group of people at a camp named Mallory. And then there's a few other people that he meets up with, Alec, who is basically one of the guys that helps keep Mallory safe because of the situation that they found themselves in.
How did they wind up in a camp?
Well, that's what you're trying to figure out. He starts off that he's going about his business. That's the story they all have, is they're going about their lives. And next thing you know, they're at a place where they don't even know where they're at. And they just kind of got together in this camp to keep each other safe, but they really don't know where they're at. And as you read the story, you're trying to figure it out. You're trying to figure out where they're at, what brought them there, why they're there, and what's chasing them, what's going after them that causes them to live in so much fear.
So do they have to run from something together?
They do have to run, yeah. They try and keep torches and lights together to chase off whatever it is that's chasing them. But sometimes they are caught off guard and are by themselves, and then all they can do is just run and try and reach the camp or a place of safety. When you look at the situation, as you read the story, one of the things that their first thing they're told is that men outnumber women over 200 to 1. So they automatically put the woman in charge. So there's all these guys, and sometimes in each camp, there might be just one woman. And they're like, you know what? Instead of us trying to fight for who's in charge, she's going to be in charge. All decisions will go through her.
I like that. I like that a lot.
Yeah, so they don't have to worry about anybody. If anybody does try and basically take over, they're just kicked out of the camp. And they're even told, if you're kicked out, the odds of your survival, they're like, well, none ever have.
So your book focuses on a few characters, but there's hundreds of people in various camps.
Exactly. They all have the same story. They don't know where they're at or what's going on.
Are there any conflicts between any of the characters?
Not really conflicts, no. Because they don't know people's backgrounds. They've had people come to the camp that have tried to hurt some of the women because they don't know their background, and they found out that these guys were murderers and stuff. And so in those cases, they just kick them out of the camp and stuff. So as for actual conflicts among them, there isn't really any.
So do they ever see what they're running from?
That's actually when you're reading the story, you find out that none of them have ever seen it. And so that's what they're trying to figure out, what it is that's out there.
What, is it a feeling that they get? I mean, how do they know they're being chased by something?
They can hear something. They hear what sounds like growling, so they think it's an animal, but they also feel strong gusts of wind. So that's why they know but that's how they know whatever it is coming. Is the wind just picks up and pushes at them. So they're like, oh, something's coming. We need to get out of here.
Whenever I talk to sci-fi authors, usually they're following other sci-fi authors. Mm-hmm. Or they're Comic-Con fans, or, they seem to have are you any of the above?
I've never actually been to a Comic-Con. I've always wanted to go, but I mean, I have looked into a few websites about fan fiction writers and stuff, just to kind of get ideas on how they write their stories. Because one of the things I was worried about, especially since, like I said, the inspiration from this story was from Star Trek, right. I was worried about plagiarism. So I'm like going, okay, I don't want to look too much into that, because I don't really want to get the feeling like I'm plagiarizing something.
Right. So you're clear, right?
Yes.
You're all good to go?
I'm all good to go, yeah.
And it seems that there's a lot of people who take pieces of other books, TV shows or whatever, and then spin off their own story. That seems to be a common thing. Is that what fan fiction is?
That actually, yes. That's what fan fiction is. It's like they'll take, like I said, I'm a Trekkie, so I'm going to keep using Star Trek as my illustration.
That's fine. I love Star Trek, but I go back to William Shatner. I mean,
hey, I've got all of those.
No, you don't.
Yep, got all of them. What's funny is my brother-in-law actually just recently found me a little Admiral Kirk 50th anniversary edition of him.
No.
Yep.
What is it about Star Trek that fascinates you?
I think when it comes to it is because anything can happen. That's one of the things I love about science fiction, is you can kill a character just to bring him back to life a season later. And I think, and it's one of those things, it's like anything that can't happen can happen in science fiction. And I think that's what I like about Star Trek, is it's things that, there is a lot of accurate science in it, but also, they put in that spin of anything can happen. And then, of course, they're also trying to make this helping us to see, hey, humans and other cultures can get along. We have to just work at it.
Well, when you're talking about other cultures, usually, if you're talking Star Trek, it's aliens.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
It's like, other planets, people on other planets. But it could definitely apply to getting along with people wherever they're from, just because they're different, right?
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
Do these people all look like people? They don't look different, right?
In my story, yes, they all look like people.
And you're not going to say whether there's aliens involved.
I am not going to say whether aliens are involved, and plausible deniability here. You know what? I'm not saying there is aliens, and I'm not saying there's not aliens in this story.
Animal or alien? What is it?
Exactly.
And when you say awakening, so why the title? Are they waking up in the camp? Are the camps really where they come to their senses?
Well, that's actually the more you read the story, you're going to understand it, because it's actually more something someone's going to say in the story. That kind of because of the situation that they're in, it kind of fits that way.
When you go out to talk about your book, because you've set up some book signings and stuff, right?
Yes.
Don't people want to know more?
They do. And that's why it's like one of those things I want to try and keep people hanging. Because a few people that have read my book and have given me feedback, one of the first things they say to me is, this is really a page turner. Because you really have to read the story to understand what's going on. It's almost like some of those movies that have the twisted ending.
Yes.
And that's basically what I wanted out of the stories. I didn't want everybody to know from the beginning what was happening. I wanted them to read the story and realize, oh my word, that's what's going on, kind of thing.
Okay. Now your next thing, you've got more books coming, right?
I do, yes. My next big one that I'm working on and is actually a children's series.
Okay.
It's based on my sister and I's our adventures with our imaginary friends.
Are they aliens?
You know, that would be great, but no, they're not aliens.
My kids had imaginary friends. I think it's the best. It's the greatest thing. Because, just like with aliens, they can die and come back.
Exactly. In our case, you know what? They made our room a terrible mess all the time.
Did they?
Yes, and my parents wanted to blame us, but, you know, it was really them.
I can't believe your parents. I cannot believe they did that to you. How dare they?
I know.
All right, Eileen, you take care.
Okay, thanks. You too. Bye-bye.
We hope you enjoyed this edition of the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable, where authors from all walks of life come together to discuss the trials, tribulations, and triumphs of publishing their books. I'm Alice Stockton Rossini. We hope to see you back here every Saturday night at 8 o'clock, or listen to our podcast anytime on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, and PodServe, just to name a few. The Author Roundtable is sponsored by ReaderHouse Online Bookstore, where independent new authors come first.